Tettles, have you heard about the new dungeon changes over on Wowhead?
Yes, Dratnos, of course I have. I've been looking at them all day yesterday, and now here we are to break them down for you guys. So, just to jump into it pretty quick, there have been a lot of dungeon changes. There have been bosses and trash nerfs to dungeons, and there have been multiple affix changes, whether that be for storming and necrotic. And there's a lot that's going to be coming in the 9.1 patch. Of course, this is only active on the 9.1 PTR. They did do some lieutenant tuning as well to the new seasonal affix, but that's not necessarily what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be talking about more of the tangible things, why they're happening with like the bosses and trash, and then what this kind of means for necrotic and storming. So first thing, we got some boss changes, Dratnos. Dealer's IX is the first one up. What do you have to think?
There's a numerical nerf on the damage to Arcane Lightning. Quite a big numerical nerf here as well. This is like 15% damage or 20%, something in that range. And they've changed the Arcane Vulnerability mechanic so that it doesn't increase all the damage you take, Arcane damage. It just increases the damage you take from Arcane Lightning. So these two combined should really reduce the power of that mechanic to kill your group members.
Yeah, but it's going to have a greater importance on like juggling the lightning back and forth. But like you said, whenever you have to like go up in the air, there's so many times where you'll hit the ordnance to go up in the air, and then you'll get zapped by the lightning midair unless you're deliberately putting it on the tank and just die. And so that's kind of going away unless because before you'd have to pop an immunity for that kind of stuff. But now they just basically make you have to juggle between 3 players. Which, I mean, I don't know if you've pugged a bunch, but I don't ever really see a lot of juggling.
Yeah, so it'll be a little bit more punishing, right? If you get too much Arcane Vulnerability, the Arcane Lightning will be more one-shotty. If you take it 3 times in a row or whatever, that's going to be potentially more damage. Although even so, with the base damage nerf, it'll probably not even be worse. It'll probably be about the same in the worst case situation. So all in all, it's a nerf in almost all cases, and maybe it'll be about the same if you're playing really badly against the mechanic.
Yeah, if you're just ignoring it completely, yeah, maybe it's about the same.
Next up, big changes to Hakar. Yeah, these are so massive.
So
do you want to explain? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the text reads very strange for this one, talking about like, oh, the boss is now no longer immune to interrupt effects, and you're just like, but what does this mean? And so there were people yesterday that went in and were testing Hakar, and there's an editor's note for this. It says, this changes to indicate that Hakar no longer does anything other than blood barrage during his shield phase. He doesn't melee, and his energy pauses while his shield is active. Thanks to Mandel for testing this. And we have a video as well. What were you going to say, Dratnos?
Yeah, so if you watch in the video, you can see on the focus frame that no energy is being gained during this phase, which is a big change that'll impact really groups that are, at the level where this boss is hard and it's taking a long time. Hakar kind of had this dominant strategy where in lower level keys, or even as the key level started getting higher, you would just pack all of your cooldowns and your pride buff into killing this boss before it got too deep into its phases, before it was hitting these massive blood barriers, because you would have these blood barriers, and then by the time you actually DPS through it outside of cooldowns, the boss was at 70% energy again, and you get the next blood barrier, right? And so this strategy then sort of became, okay, do we actually wait for it to fill energy all the way up again before we break through? And that starts to feel really bad. But this change is going to really minimize that. So if you're used to Hakar dying under 2 minutes, it'll be basically the same. It'll be a little bit more wiggle room. You'll get a little bit more space between your blood barriers. But if you're used to Hakar taking like 4 minutes, if you ever done this thing on a Tyrannical 22 or whatever, you're no longer going to have that experience of the boss being like 90% blood barriers, 10% damage phases anymore.
Yeah, it's overall a very good change. They really went with the popular, this was like the suggested fix for this boss for forever. And so I'm glad that they did go with the more popular change for how this is going to work. Like, that boss doesn't need too much else aside from he just shields himself way too much. So good change overall, I think.
It does mean that the shield phase is going to be a little bit less hectic as well, because one of the ways that it used to work was that the boss would continue to melee, would continue to cast Corrupted Blood after the first 14 seconds of a shield.
Oh, yeah.
That's not going to be the case anymore. Now it'll just be channeling until the shield is broken through. But I think the boss will still be sufficiently hectic for me, at least.
Yep. Next up, we got Amarth and the Tortured Echoes. Basically, they're hitting that with like a 15% nerf, something like that. It's looking pretty good. Like the Tortured Echoes it's like the ambient damage that happens on that fight, just pulsing AoE. It was pretty rough on affixes like Grievous. It was really hard to heal once you started getting, like, after the second set of ads, it was just like, okay, this is entirely too much damage. That's why you saw groups had to go in there with like a javelin, a hammer, and the prideful buff, and still would die to the second set of like ads. I mean, a lot of the times the ads would be like a bit rough to kill, but that's neither here nor there. That's not like the purpose of this Tortured Echoes nerf. But I think that they were kind of spot on with this one. Maybe they could have hit the ad HP just a little bit, but overall, I think that this Tortured Echoes nerf is pretty warranted.
It makes a lot of sense to deliver these boss nerfs now that Prideful is going away as well, because these bosses we're just going to have less firepower going into, especially the ones earlier in the dungeons before we have all 4 of our anima powers, like Crixus in Sanguine Depths, which is getting the old nerf to Juggernaut Rush and to the AoE from soaking the orbs. Not massive nerfs to those damage, but enough that that'll make the boss easier. This is a boss that's been nerfed several times already and remains one of the most hearthed to bosses, I would say, of the expansion.
I suspect that this isn't going to change enough for this boss to not be hearthable. Like, okay, so the Juggernaut Rush, either you were playing it correctly or you weren't, kind of thing. You're still going to need to be able to get like 4 to 5 players into the Juggernaut Rush. Otherwise, you're going to end up sacking your dude. Does that damage to the Severing Smash orbs really change that much, do you think?
It's so weird to see the number go from 8 to 7 as well. But if we assume that's proportional to how much the nerf is going to be, right? We're looking at like a 12.5% nerf or something here. I mean, yeah, that's pretty big. It's like you're soaking 4.5 orbs instead of 5 now over the course of it.
You know what an interesting nerf would have been? Maybe if they removed like the orb from the tank. Just completely
interesting.
Yeah,
that would have made it a lot easier to position as well, because one of the challenges on that fight is the tank having to move to drop the orb and then really quickly get the boss so that it doesn't connect with that orb.
I wonder if that would have been a better nerf. I think that would have been a pretty cool change to see. But
I don't know. It's kind of fun to have that like that. I mean, that's a difficult thing to do well. But
yes,
it's nice to have those things in the game.
How do you? I mean, okay, so yeah, it's
just
cool.
Less fun on like a Death Knight.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's cool in Vengeance meta. What are you doing whenever you're not playing Vengeance Demon Hunter?
Well, you just soak your orb really quick, right? You soak the tank orb first. The tank grabs it themselves.
Yeah.
We have a returning hero as well. Zero the Underhanded, after a little bit of a hiatus, a little bit of a vacation, has returned to World of Warcraft. So this is the 4th mob in the 3 mob boss fight at the start of Theater of Pain, and she's back, and her opportunity strikes is hitting harder than it used to as well.
Why did they remove her?
I'm not really sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe she was buggy, not always showing up, or people didn't notice when she showed up. So maybe they're increasing the numbers here, so we notice more often when Zero shows up. But it's like those snakes from Temples of Thralis, right? Where you hit her with a CC when she stuns one of your friends and she goes away, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was wild to me that they removed her when they removed her. I didn't even, okay, she was annoying, but she wasn't impossible to deal with or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some reason that she had to go away for a bit, and they fixed the bug or whatever, and now she's back.
I guess. So that's
I mean, the first boss should remain one of the easiest ones in Theater, compared to the Gore Chops and the Zavs.
Yeah.
All right, so those are the boss changes. Do we want to hop down to the trash?
Yep, we got trash changes in Sanguine Depths and Halls of Atonement. Sangy D getting a big Remnant of Fury and Chamber Sentinel change. So the Remnant of Fury is the one that has that nasty curse that's put onto players. That curse is getting nerfed just a bit to where it doesn't one-shot you if you don't decurse it within the first tick, or two-shot you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that these dispellable curses and poison effects and diseases should be nerfed to the point where it's not just like you're dead if you don't have the right dispel for it in a high key.
I mean, you're dead in 2 ticks if you don't have the dispel for it. It's not even just you're dead; you're just instantly dead too. I'm surprised that they didn't hit the Vestige of Doubt huddle.
Yeah, that's the AoE that if you're used to playing with melee that are a little bit clueless, you'll really notice in Sanguine Depths when they are standing in that puddle and die in 2 ticks as well. I don't know that one. I mean, it's a big AoE thing that you just have to stand out of. The problem is it's red on red, so it's kind of hard to see in that dungeon.
It also ticks insta, which is like pretty
True.
problematic. Which is like, oh, okay, you're dying to that. That's unfortunate. Then we got the Severing Slice. Yeah, for the Chamber Sentinel. Do you like this nerf as a tank, Dratnos?
So yeah, I haven't actually done this on PTR, so I don't know if this means that you can no longer like leap away, if it's or exactly how this will behave, because that was sort of a piece of cool counterplay it had with the old way, was that you could just get out of the way if you moved really fast. Now I'm not sure it will work like that. I don't know if they're changing this to like a targeted effect. If this will be something where like if the tank's out of range, is this going to be killing my rogue now?
Oh no,
what's
it's
going on with this thing?
I hope it's not a
Yeah,
fervent.
if they change it like that, I don't know. To clarify, I need to go and do this thing on PTR. Either way, I think that the numbers on this were fine, and I think the fact it was a frontal, like they nerfed this ability substantially in a previous round of hot fixes, and I hadn't noticed too much of a problem with it in my runs. But maybe this is the kind of thing that was murdering a lot of innocent bystanders in Sanguine Depths runs. So fair enough. I don't have a strong opinion about it.
So then when are they gonna hit the big boy necrotic wake that frontals me every single time because I'm standing too close?
Oh no, yeah, that one is so it's so fast and it's not telegraphed at all as well. It's like I don't know. You don't even really see, like, the nice thing about the Severing Slice is when you saw a big animation, you're like, oh, it's the frontal that got me.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, Halls of Atonement, Thrash
buffs.
Ugh, buffs. So no.
Yeah, the Thrash damage has been substantially nerfed, right? This is like a 30% nerf to how much damage Thrash does. But if you want to outrange it, you got to get 60 yards away now, not 40, which notably means that like range DPS, there's no shot that they're going to be continuing to do damage if you're trying to outrange this. My suspicion is you're not going to try and outrange this thing anymore. You're going to stand in. Maybe though, in a really high key level situation, the whole group will run away 60 yards. That I don't know. That's a big cost to pay, though.
We've seen stuff like that happen before. The Bowbreakers and Misatirna Scythe have a 60-yard range. Some people push their Thrash at the exact same time. I mean, it has happened in the it has happened in the past, but 60 yards is a long way of not DPSing, especially if you're melee too. Like, oh no, that's pretty brutal.
Do you imagine being like a Frost Death Knight? You're like, okay, I gotta start running away now. And then you come back, you get to do like 2 globals, and it's like, okay, it's time for me to run away again.
I think it's overall a good change to make sure that the Thrash is like damage is appropriate relative to, like, I don't know. You couldn't have 5 people standing in the Thrash, otherwise you were just gonna die as it currently stands. So I mean, it definitely did need a nerf, and I think that them making it 60 yards. I don't know.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of counterplay to this damage as well, right? It's like physical AoE. I think it's dodgeable as well.
Physical AoE is not mitigated by armor.
Right, but it is, there's a lot of physical immune type stuff that you can use against that damage. There's, AoE damage reduction effects. So reducing the damage on this as well, I mean, it's probably going to be something that you will just stand in. But yeah, maybe at really high keys, you'll see groups doing some degenerate running away stuff.
Yeah, Dratnos,
and then Wicked
promoting
Bolt.
Rogue propaganda. I will not stand for that.
It's so good. Wicked Bolt has been buffed from. It's got a big buff to its damage now.
What?
This is completely surprising to me because, like, in my keys, I was already in a place where Wicked Bolt goes off, my tank dies, right?
Yes.
So I don't know why this damage number has gone up.
I read it and I thought it was going down. I'll be real with you. I thought it was a nerf at first, and then I realized, like, wait, they're buffing it.
I mean, I understand if they want to make Halls of Atonement trash, like, more difficult, but I don't think this really changes what you can pull. It just means that, like, there's no shot your tank lives if one of these casts goes off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's that Wicked Bolt is probably that, and the jagged bleed from the hounds are probably the 2 hardest hitting things in the dungeon. And I have my tank die to Wicked Bolt more than the jagged hound bleed.
Yeah, well, I mean, this might. I don't think this will do anything good with regards to, like, making you do a more considered pull
No.
or anything like that. I think it'll be pretty much the same pulls will be possible. It's just, a stray bolt is going to be much more lethal. It was already pretty lethal though, so yeah, this is a surprising buff to see as well. Although I guess I understand wanting to buff Halls of Atonement trash because all the other trash and all the other dungeons is much harder.
Any other mobs you'd like to see nerfed, Dratnos? Any that come to mind? I have a couple
Mob
in my
nerfs.
mind. Yeah. The masks and DOS listed. Hellions and Spires.
Yeah. Oh, the triple mini boss at the end of Spires.
Yep. Oh, okay. The angels
could use some. Yeah, those could use some nerfs.
Also, Matriarch and Theater Pain champions.
The squad leader pulls in Spires as well. I'd say could use a little bit of tuning down. Yeah.
I think overall though, these the Sanguine Depths ones are really good. The Halls of Atonement ones, I don't know, the Wicked Bolt ones.
I kind of like getting rid of this outrange meta on Thrash. I honestly maybe just make it 100 yards so that we don't think about even still doing it. Because the problem is, like, if you're outranging a 60-yard cast, that's way worse than outranging a 40-yard cast in terms of how unfun it is. But it might still be the meta here. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big takeaway. I think the Thrash one is like warranted though.
Yeah, right. I definitely I like the direction they're going there. Although I'm not convinced that this is going to achieve what they want, but I agree with what they want there. Not sure what they want to do with the Wicked Bolt thing, though. Let's take a look at the affix stuff, though. Yeah, so Necrotic has a pretty weird change, I would say. This thing's like undocumented. It's apply Necrotic stacks on every other successful melee swing, which, fun fact, it's worked that way on bosses since BFA.
Yeah.
But now it'll work that way on trash as well. Which is a pretty sizable nerf in a sort of invisible way, like to an affix. It's so weird. I mean, you could think of this as a 50% nerf to Necrotic on trash and unchanged on bosses, and that's pretty close to what it's going to do, right? Any situation where you'd have 20 Necrotic stacks before, you would either have 10 or you might have dropped. There might be situations where you'll, if you barely refreshed your stacks before, you would drop them with this new thing. That's probably pretty rare for the most part.
Yeah.
My guess is that you'll probably just have half the stacks you otherwise would have had. But like, that's a lot of extra healing that's going to be coming through. That, I mean, Necrotic Wounds healing reduction is the most important part of that, and that is half as potent now, basically.
I think any nerf to Necrotic is a good one and a warranted one. It still doesn't necessarily address the real issue with Necrotic, though, like you touched on. It's like you're not gonna get like Necrotic removed at a different rate. Honestly, you're probably still gonna have to kite the exact same trash packs you were already previously kiting whenever Necrotic is active, and you still have like a pretty limited pull size that you're able to really do. I don't feel like it changes the core functionality of how Necrotic works, which was kind of what a lot of people wanted. It's still just like, I would say, disproportionately unfun for tanks to be able to deal with. They still have to kite.
So the same strategies will be more effective against Necrotic, right?
Yeah.
Like if there was a pull that you ran into, you tanked for 5 seconds, and then you ran away, you can now run in, tank it for 10 seconds, and run away, right? Which is good. It doesn't change the core of the fact that you're running in, doing a couple globals, getting some threat, and then getting out of there.
Exactly.
And I think it probably doesn't change like which pulls you can combine or anything like that. Like maybe on the very margins, there's going to be a few cases like that. But for the most part, yeah, I think it'll just mean that like the existing strategies will get a lot better against Necrotic. I was hoping to see a core functionality change on this affix as well. The change I've been advocating for has been for them to give it the Mongoose Bite treatment, where it's a debuff that increases in stacks but not duration every time it's applied to you.
Yeah.
And they could rebalance the numbers on like how long the duration is, how big the effect is, to make it as impactful as they feel like. But then you have these natural drops without having to do the kiting.
Yeah, that's the important thing. I mean, right now, Necrotic, like, you become unhealable at 35 stacks. You have to kite like 15 to 20. Like, you have to get out of there by 15 to 20. Otherwise, you're in deep trouble. Unless you have like any wall effect active, which at that point you can stand in for up until 25 stacks, and then you must leave.
Or you're a bear with the Ursox Lego.
Yeah, UFR is pretty cracked.
For some reason, ignores Necrotic. Yeah, very cool. I don't know. I mean, I think it's important to not understate the size of this nerf, though. Like, this is for all intents and purposes, the affix is 50% less than it used to be if it's applying on every other melee swing. Like, that is a huge nerf. I think that you will probably feel necrotic being a lot easier with this than it used to be.
Dude, absolutely massive nerf for Brewmaster Monk too. Like,
oh yeah, Brewmaster, because Brewmaster was coming close to resetting on a lot of like that's probably the spec that most often had those like heartbreaking 1 second. I almost dodged enough on this mini boss to reset type thing. And you do dodge enough on bosses to do it. So now, yeah, this I think the biggest nerf for this will be on like mini boss type encounters where tanks were getting pounded before and will now have a lot more flexibility. It is such a weird change though, because like I don't know, it's such a like back end hidden change to an affix.
They need more. It's fine, but I'm glad they're changing it.
Let's take a look at Storming, which has a much more noticeable change.
Yes.
So there's been 4 changes to the affix, 2 of which are making it easier to dodge, and 2 of it are making it less bad if you don't dodge. Those first 2 changes are it's going to go slower.
Yeah.
And it's always traveling clockwise, right?
Yeah, and then the other 2 are that the damage got nerfed, which, I mean, it's not the biggest of deals, but you don't hate a damage nerf to it. And then the most important change of them all, it despawns whenever it hits a player, and you're like, oh, thank goodness. That's the most important thing too, because there are a lot of times, Lord Chamberlain, for example, you just get caught in a washing machine. Anytime that you're in Sanguine Depth corridors, Ventanax and Spires of Ascension, those kind of situations where it's like your movement is very limited and you're not super in control of it, and then you have a tornado spawn on top and you're like, I guess I die.
I love this despawns when hit by a single player change so much, because I think it really addresses the core problem of Storming, which was like a 3 melee group was just getting beaten down compared to a 0 melee group or a 1 melee group, right? Whereas now, you know, there's actually an argument, hey, 3 melee taking tornadoes a third as often as each other, that might even be better than 1 melee who, you know, is getting beaten by all the tornadoes, right? So I think this goes a long way to making it so that it's kind of the damage of Storming is split among all your melee, and that makes it so that it's fine to bring a lot of melee again, which is good. Melee needs some help in M+.
Yeah, I think this is an absolutely spot-on change, and I think that, like you said, that it addresses the core functionality of the problem, and it really just like fixes like what made Storming hard. It's still like a difficult to fix, but it's not okay.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're still going to get killed if you get hit by a tornado at a bad time, right? Like you get lobbed into a frontal on the screenshot even in this article, which has you a Darkblade casting its thrust, right? Like that tornado is still going to kill you if you get hit by it as a melee DPS, right? You're still going to then be just stuck in that frontal. So it's not like the affix has become free or anything. It just means that like instead of having to think about it 50 times on every pull, you're going to have to think about it like 5 times, right? And if you soak the tornado once, it goes away. Nobody else is going to have to think about it for that pull as well, that one tornado.
Yeah, overall, great change. And I'm super happy with Storming. I'm excited to see what more they have coming down the pipe. I think that there can be a little bit more crash nerfs. I think the boss nerfs, they were trying to address bosses that you played both Bloodlust and Pride. And in Amarth's case, also a Javelin.
And particularly the early bosses in dungeons where you're not going to have 4 anima powers, because I think that that's another crucial thing about this next patch affix is that those anima powers are going to be like, you're going to be pretty strong at the end of a dungeon when you have 4 anima powers on your whole group. But when there's a boss that's like the first or second boss of a dungeon, we're going to be really missing the Pride buff on it.
Yo, can we cop a bolstering nerf?
True. Yeah, where is that bolstering nerf? That particularly, dude, the sickest part as well is they gave us the anima power that has bolstering, and that has a duration on how long the bolstering stacks last on players, which is the exact thing they need to make it happen on enemies as well. But I don't know if it's coming. We'll see. This might be the last round of 9.1 changes. Maybe we'll get a release candidate and a release date next week, or maybe we'll get 5 more weeks of incremental changes to everything. There's no way to know.
Yeah, certainly no way to know. But at that, I think that's going to do it for us today. Make sure you guys check out all of the articles that are linked down in the description. Make sure to check out the Titanforge Podcast and other weekly stuff that Dratnos and I are participating in. And that's going to be it. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys in the next one. Later.